Hey, welcome to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. And tonight is a fun night because we have a special guest with us. Not only with me, as always, is Dave and Fredo. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hi.
We have, you are the founder of the Star Wars Underworld podcast, right? We have Mr. Ben Hart joining us tonight. Hey, Ben.
How's it going, guys? It's an absolute pleasure to be on with you guys, talk some Star Wars and whatever else comes to mind. Because I know you guys want some information from me, and maybe I want some information from you too. So we'll just see how this goes. But yeah, I'm excited to be here.
I feel like I have to call my lawyer now to see if I can answer things.
You have the right to remain silent.
But no, so yeah, this is fun. I mean, you know, we were talking off before we start hitting record, but I've been a fan of the Star Wars Underworld podcast for a while, and I actually think maybe I hipped Dave and Fredo to this podcast to you guys. Was that my doing?
Yeah.
So it's
That's
part
amazing.
it's part of our listening pleasure. So yeah, so no, this is fun. Like I said, it's kind of nerding out here a little bit.
That's awesome.
You know, our whole thing here is we talk a lot of Star Wars, probably 99% Star Wars, but Dave and I, when we kind of started putting our brains together on this, we wanted it to be anything kind of nerdy because Disney Plus was just coming out, so it was kind of seemed like a good avenue. So that's, I guess, what I want to talk about just real quick with everybody. WandaVision. The latest episode, what we think. And I don't know if we need to bring everybody up to speed on what the last episode was, but basically it was Wanda's therapy session with Agatha. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say, very good character development kind of episode, you know, about her and where she comes from and where Agatha came from as well. And so that's my favorite stuff. Like, by far, the actiony things, the tense moments, those things are great too, but it's the character stuff that always does it for me. So I loved it.
Yeah, no, I found it to be, I mean, it was interesting because it's stuff that's kind of been hinted at and mentioned. And you kind of, you know, as you start thinking of the story, you start putting it together. Okay, this is kind of what happened. This kind of how it went on. But it's really good to see. It was really interesting kind of journey because outside of the movies, we really haven't seen Wanda's character and kind of how she put together living a different life. You know, when we first met her, she's an Eastern European involved in what some people call a terror group, and now she's a superhero living in America, and you know, she's lost everybody she's loved, and so kind of getting her to process through all that was the meat of the episode. Was really well done.
Ben, have you been digging WandaVision?
Oh yeah, I stay up to an ungodly time of hour at night and watch them on Thursday nights because I want to avoid spoilers, and I'm just enthralled with this show, man. It is so good, and I don't know, like I was talking the other day on one podcast, and like I don't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting to be this enthralled by this show. Like, I've been looking forward to Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Like, that's my jam. I love Captain America, all those guys. Like, that's the thing. But like, this show is like, now I'm worried that the rest of the shows aren't going to be nearly as good as this one because this is so great. I don't know how they could top it. But this last episode was, I think we kind of all saw it coming in regards to like, yeah, they're going to have an exposition episode to show everything, like, but not this in depth and going into her character, and never really realized like, there's few characters, if any characters, in the MCU that have had as much of a tragic backstory as hers. You know, so much loss, and really put you in her headspace. And also, Catherine Hahn as Agatha is just so amazing. She just continues to just light up that show so much. But yeah, I've loved it so far.
Yeah,
she's turned herself into a meme at this point. Like, she's so great in that role. Like, now she's a meme. That winking still of her now is everywhere, and I love it.
Yeah, you know, I was not sure seeing the lead up, all the ads for WandaVision. I didn't know if it was going to be, let's say that it is not what I expected it to be. And I remember after the second episode, my wife and I looked at each other and said, this better, you know, kick into gear. And boy, did it kick into gear. Yeah. And actually, I'm kind of like, how are they going to wrap this up in one more episode? But, yeah. And so so we threw this around our private little conversation here. So anybody, if you're afraid of spoilers, turn it off right now and then come back later. Where Elizabeth Olsen talked about the Luke Skywalker like cameo that is coming. And somebody said they're calling it right now. They'd bet dollars to donuts that it's Dick Van Dyke.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that.
No, that's what I said in our group. I was like, yeah, that's outside of the box. And it's Paul Bettany said it wanted to be with somebody. He was always wanted to work with this actor, so you knew it had to be somebody kind of. But we were always kind of thinking somebody from the Marvel universe somehow. But it would kind of make sense with the whole deal.
What if it's Dick Van Dyke showing up with his lawyers, like, "Hey, Wanda, this is copyright infringement. You copied our show."
So now I don't know, guys. What do you think that is plausible, or do you think it is just too goofy to be true?
It's in keeping with the spirit of the show, which is important. But also, I mean, in any kind of way, it's making homage to the influences of this show. But I think they've shown rather well that Wanda's powers give the opportunity to rewrite whatever they want to do, whichever way they want to do it. So it could very well be Dick Van Dyke pulled out of his TV show in modern America.
Of course, I guess I should check. Dick Van Dyke's still living, right?
He's still around. Okay, I'm gonna throw another wrench in your gears here. What if it's actually Mephisto, and he's the big bad, but he's played by Dick Van Dyke?
See,
exactly.
It could be. Yeah.
If you've ever seen the movie Night at the Museum, you know Dick Van Dyke can play a bad guy. I'm just gonna say that. If you haven't seen that, I don't want to spoilers, but that's an interesting role for him.
I forgot that Dick Van Dyke was the bad guy in that movie. That's right. Well, all right. Well, so far we've talked about Marvel and we've talked about Night at the Museum. So, but anyway, no, I just thought that was because I was thinking, I mean, I'd heard rumors of maybe, Serene McKellen. That would be kind of that'd be an easy fit. The Dick Van Dyke one that'd be pretty cool. But I guess we will find out. And see, I can't stay up that late on Thursday night, Ben. So it's for the three of us, of us,
I shouldn't stay up that late, but
it's no Twitter Fridays for us.
Yeah. Here's what I learned: get first thing in the morning, fire up Disney Plus, get some breakfast, watch it, then go with the rest of the day. Otherwise, you have to stay off Twitter.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, let's get our brain wrapped around some Star Wars. What do you say? I've got trivia as always, but Ben, we will not make you go first. And by the way, this is this is from the Trivial Pursuit DVD Star Wars Saga Edition. So it is episodes 1 through 6. So there's no Rogue One, no this is pre-Disney stuff. And I'm sorry, I know you're a big fan of the Clone Wars, so there's no Clone Wars, trivia in here either. But anyway,
cool.
All right. Oh, Fredo.
Yep. What you got?
How many fleshy whiskers dangle from Sebulba's head?
Fleshy whiskers.
Yeah, no. Yeah, the little.
Sounds like something you name your cat, isn't it? It's like, hey, where's fleshy whiskers?
The little extensions of skin that he kind of pulls and tugs at. I'm gonna go with 2.
The answer is 4, actually.
Okay, yeah.
4 fleshy whiskers. Now everybody is the smarter for that one.
Yeah, that's
the full name. The full name of the band is 4 Fleshy Whiskers.
4 fleshy whiskers.
Not just fleshy whiskers.
There's 4 of us on this podcast right now. Maybe we should just change the name for one episode. All right. Dave, going to you. What character restores order at a sports bar by saying, Jedi business, go back to your drinks? We've gone from
Anakin
4
Skywalker.
fleshy whiskers to the easiest question you could get. It would be Anakin Skywalker. You are correct. All right, Ben, are you nervous?
A little. Always in these situations I am.
All right, well, here we go. This is what manages to fire 3 laser bolts in Chewbacca's direction on the surface of Hoth?
A Imperial probe droid.
See, he said the whole answer. Yep, he didn't say just a probe droid, but he got it all. The Imperial, yeah, it's.
I wanted to be safe.
I didn't throw you a softball question on purpose, but you should be glad you didn't get the 4 fleshy whiskers one. All right, and so for me, the first one I look at, who warns Queen Amidala, I can only protect you, I can't fight a war for you. That's Qui-Gon Jinn. Yeah. Hey, look at that. I'll accept Fredo. Sorry, Fredo.
Yeah, we got the 4 fleshy whiskers question.
But all 10 listeners, they all now know how many fleshy whiskers come out of Sebulba's head.
Now I'm prepared for the real trivia.
There we go. So yeah, I will. All right. Okay. So I have to run this by Ben. All right. So I'm sorry. You guys have heard the story. Fredo, were you there to live it?
I can edit this out.
No, leave it in. I want to hear.
Oh boy.
So okay. So we get together and we play bar trivia when there's not a pandemic going on.
Understood.
And here was the question. All right. I memorized it, so you'll get it verbatim. I want to know if you'd answer the same way. Harvested from the planet Jeddah, Kyber crystals are used to power what Star Wars weapon?
What is a lightsaber, Alex?
Okay. Is there another answer? You would have been if you were on our team.
Death Star. Death Star.
Thank you. So I threw
that's a tricky one, man.
I threw a fit and gave the trivia jockey like my doctoral dissertation on this. And
she couldn't care less.
She couldn't care less, and she was like, go with the least geeky answer. I was like, least geeky answer. You prefaced it with and so I wrote on the paper. I said, since you referenced Rogue One, which is about the Death Star, I'm putting the Death Star, and we got it wrong because it was lightsaber. So I'm still mad about that. Obviously, how many years ago was that, Fredo? 3, something like that.
Oh my gosh!
All right,
well, that was a while back.
So yeah, you'll have to throw that one by Dominic, who's like your trivia genius, right? He's the one that's
he's the most powerful one with the trivia among the 3 of us. So yeah, I'm curious what he would say.
Yeah, throw that one to him. But until then, all right, Fredo, let's go into some news. What do we got going on this week?
Okay, right quick. First things first, we'll start off with the good news. Congratulations to John Boyega, who won a Golden Globe on Sunday.
Yay.
What do you win a Golden Globe for?
Best performance by an actor in a television supporting role for his performance in Small Axe, which is a TV miniseries he did with 12 Years a Slave director Steve McQueen. This was a series of like 5 long episodes that they filmed for BBC detailing the lives of West Indian immigrants into the UK. And he played a role in that, and hey, Golden Globe. So
wow.
There you go.
So it's good for him. So it's always good to hear that they're getting work and that they're doing well. We'll go from that to less good news. In case nobody knew at this point, I'm sure at this point everybody knows because it was announced yesterday. San Diego Comic-Con is not happening this year. So they basically released a statement saying, due to concern for public health and safety, San Diego Comic Convention had to cancel both in-person events, both last year and the WonderCon in Anaheim this year. So they're lamenting the postponement of the in-person Comic-Con this year. So they're hoping that everything can take place normally in person in 2022, and they're announcing that they'll transfer everybody's badges and permits and everything to next year.
So given that it's in Florida, Pensacon, is that still going on?
They have, I believe, have postponed or canceled it. They haven't had it. They didn't have it last year, and I think they canceled it for this year too.
Oh, since
it happens in February, I think.
Yeah, it's supposed to be in February. That's right. I guess I would have missed it then. Yeah, because we had the guys from Nerd Cave Retro on one time, a video game podcast, and they mentioned Pensacon. Hit me to that. Oh, Fredo's got breaking news.
For the moment, I just went to the website. May 21st to the 23rd of this year, new dates. So maybe they're hoping that as the vaccine distribution happens, maybe they'll get to at least have some kind of an event, but We'll see.
That's Pensacon, folks, not the
Pensacon, not
San Diego
Comic-Con.
Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, there's thousands of vendors, millions of fans, all the events.
Anybody
There's
here been to Comic-Con or San Diego Comic-Con?
not yet.
Not yet.
I
I was hoping to go this year, to be honest, but no dice.
My brother-in-law and sister-in-law go every year for like the last about 6 or so, and it sounds like it's just a lot of waiting in line. I mean, even worse than Star Wars Celebration, but
well, there's literally no way to create 6 feet of distance there for anything. It's just impossible.
One thing I've heard about San Diego Comic-Con is the fact that there's so much stuff to do just outside the convention. Like you don't even have a ticket, but there's like events happening like all around in downtown San Diego Comic-Con. So that's why I've always wanted to go, just to see it, because it's massive.
Yeah.
But also probably a lot of waiting in lines if you want to actually do stuff in the convention center.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fingers crossed for all the small vendors and businesses and whatnot, because there's a lot of mom and pop operations who rely on that.
Yeah, I'm sure they make most of their money in July.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move from the bad news back to the good news. Star Wars: The Bad Batch officially announced, coming May the 4th. So
perfect.
I know we were talking last week about how when the mic drop, and they come out and announced it last week. Adventures of Clone Force 99 begin on Star Wars Day, which I believe is a Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe a Tuesday. And then second episode will premiere 3 days later on Friday the 7th. And then you'll get a new episode every Friday. So they're following the same model as they did with Clone Wars, and they follow with basically every new show they've debuted on Disney Plus.
And y'all saw the picture of Fennec Shand?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is that going to be voiced by Ming-Na Wen, or is that going to be somebody?
Yes, she is voicing the character, from what I heard.
Yeah, I can't imagine that they couldn't bring her in on that.
Yeah.
The what's exciting about this for me is that Loki debuts like a month later. So you might be able to watch both back to back. That make for long Thursday nights for you, Ben.
Oh gosh, yes. Looking forward to it, but also dreading it a little bit.
Yeah, now you have to stay off Twitter even longer.
Well, yeah, no kidding. I'll just have to like cancel my account for a month.
Yeah. On even further good news, and okay, this news might be important only to me, and I don't care. But on April 6th, Republic Commando's coming back.
Yes.
I don't know. Did you ever play Republic Commando, Ben?
I have never played that game. I've seen so much gameplay over the years. This is actually my chance now, because I think it might be coming to a console I can get my hands on finally, and I've heard so many good things.
So yeah, it's coming up. Working with Asper, Lucasfilm Games. It's coming PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, and Nintendo Switch. Like I said, drops on April 6th, and you get to play as members of Delta Squad. And that's okay. When we had the video games episode, I raved about this game. So
is this going to be cross-platform? I mean, it's cross-platform. It's obviously available, but like, can we all play? Can Dave and I on our Switch and you on your PlayStation? Can we?
I don't know.
I'm not sure. There was some rumblings that it might not be multiplayer enabled, but I'm not sure if they're gonna.
Because it did have a multiplayer,
because why make it fun?
Mode. See, and that's the thing. This game came out in 2005, ahead of Revenge of the Sith, back when multiplayer wasn't what it is now. This is back then when you still connected to your friends through Xbox Live, and that was the extent of it. But this is, I mean, I would hope so. But then you also have to get into the whole, systems like PlayStation has their network and Nintendo has their network, and they don't want you talking to one another. You stay in your own playground.
Oh, cool. I was excited because Dave just recently got a Switch, and I got a Switch a few months back, so that we might actually be able to,
I'm probably going to get one pretty soon.
All right. Well, all right. One of us. One of us.
I gotta get it before
pressure.
Yeah, I gotta get it before Super Mario 35 goes away.
I realized
you
something.
got a month. You've got a month, buddy. It's going away at the end of this month.
Hey, it is. And by the way, kids, Donkey Kong is a great sobriety test. It will tell you if you are safe to drive anywhere, because I had a few beers at home and I was playing Donkey Kong and I could not make it past the first level. I'm like, what in the heck is going on here? I'm like, okay, Aaron shouldn't drive anywhere. Good thing I can't drive anywhere. So every car now should have like Donkey Kong in it, where you have to play a level to see if you're okay to drive. Anyway, sorry, that's just neither here nor there.
That is incredible.
This last one's a little bit of a rumor, I believe, right, Fredo?
Yep, it's a bit of a rumor, but of course we have to mention it.
That was Lucy. That's the Who Dat Jedi podcast rumor alert.
Right. Lucy smells a rumor. No. So this one's come from LRM Online, and it's exclusive. They're stating that Harrison Dula could be making her live action debut in Rangers of the New Republic. So obviously they get into some of the stuff we got into last few weeks regarding Cara Dune's character, Gina Carano, but they're saying some outlets have speculated that the character could be recast. Obviously, Hollywood Reporter said Lucasfilm told them not happening. So their scoop is that a source over at Lucasfilm has told them that creators are looking to bring in Harrison Dula as the bridge to connect the show to the Mandalorian universe. Now, production of Rangers is still a while away, which is where the big grain of salt needs to come in. However, the issue creators are running into is finding time to introduce a new character and connect it to kind of the Star Wars Mandalorian universe that they're building. So since Harris already been introduced in Rebels, she's the audience knows her. She's also been in Squadrons. They actually got her to be in Squadrons, and she's established. The idea would be to use her as the connecting bridge to go from whether it's an appearance in Ahsoka or Mandalorian, and then she would be the lead in Rangers of the New Republic.
And you know how I have ranted about the insistence of some that, and with all due respect to anybody, because Ben, I can't remember. I think you guys have talked about this on Star Wars Underworld, and this is just where the insistence of the person who voiced the character on Rebels shall be the actor to play it live action. Right. And that's where I've taken a little bit of like, I don't think that is necessary. But this is one where Vanessa Marshall, that voice to me needs to be behind Hera, because Hera, that voice, there's no other voice in Rebels like Hera's. So I don't know. I don't know if that would be possible. I don't know. Oh, go ahead, Fredo.
I was going to say, I mean, you could cast Vanessa Marshall given, say we've seen what Hera kind of sort of looks like at the end of Jedi from the finale of Rebels. We're expecting that this is happening sometime after season 2 or season 3 of Mandalorian. So, there's nothing saying, obviously she's going to be wearing the Twi'lek uniform costume. She's going to be made up. They're going to have her son there more likely present because they have to, Jason. So, once, the character doesn't have to travel as far from animation to live action if you want to bring Vanessa Marshall as the character, the actress.
I feel like Vanessa could pull it off. I feel like there's some actors like clearly can't do it. Some other actors are kind of in a gray area. I feel like she could do it. But I don't have as strong opinions anymore, because I was really on the Ashley Eckstein should play Ahsoka for a while there, until I saw Rosario Dawson. I was like, okay, I can live with this. Like, I think she did an amazing job. So I don't have as strong as opinions as I did regarding like this actor should play this character. But
there are some who do, but yeah.
Right. And, I can go like, I'm willing to, be a little open-minded about it, but I get where people are coming from, especially because like you have such characters that, it's hard to kind of wrap your mind around because like so many actors have just become those characters. You know them just as those characters. It's hard to like, pull your brain out of it and say, okay, anybody can play this character. I understand that. But with Hera, yeah, it would be weird to hear somebody else playing that character, especially since she's done it in the Battlefront games, I think. She did in the X-Wing game, Squadrons. So like she has kind of multi-platform done that character. So like I think there's definitely a case to be made that she could do it in live action too.
I don't know, Dave, what do you think? Because I know you're kind of a Hera fan.
Oh, I adore that character. I think she's wonderful, and Vanessa would be great. And it makes sense what Fredo was saying. It's like the concept doesn't excite me, and I think we were talking about all the Disney announcements when they happened, and we were like, "What's the least exciting show of the lineup?" And for me, it was that one. And it was just because at that point I was sort of over Gina Carano. And then obviously the fallout happened with her recently. Right. And now it's kind of like, okay, what are you going to do with this show? And so it would make sense for the connective tissue aspect of it to bring in an existing character so they don't have to do so much of the heavy lifting of establishing people, who we are, what we're doing here, all that stuff. So it makes sense. I again, grain of salt. I'm not sure that we'll do that, but I would not hate it either.
But doesn't it seem to make more sense that if you're going to bring Hera into anything, it would be the Ahsoka show?
Well, not necessarily.
Well, I was going to say you could have her show up there first and kind of lay more groundwork for her appearing in this other show.
I have to go hang out. Sorry, kids, I got to leave. I got to go hang out with the Rangers of the New Republic.
It's what they're doing now. I mean, like, we getting all these characters who they're trying to kind of like, well, we've got this spin-off potential here. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. And it makes sense.
And from the standpoint of what her character, what we know of her, she was the most devoted to the cause of the rebellion. She went all the way and fought in the Battle of Endor. And so we already established that her commitment is to the Republic. Therefore, it would make much more sense for her to be there than to be with Ahsoka and possibly Sabine out on the hunt for Ezra.
Right.
Well, yeah, and cool. All right. Well, and we're getting all sorts of rebels.
One last bit of news, and not so good.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, price of Disney Plus is increasing. We're going up $1.
Oh no.
Oh no. Look, I'm a full-on Disney shill. I got the 3-year deal back when it launched, so I'm good for a while.
I was doing the math on that. I did the 3-year thing too, and I'm like, oh no, a year has already gone by. I've only got 2 years left.
Oh yeah, if you got the regular Disney Plus, it's going from $6.99 a month to $7.99 a month, and if you got the Disney bundle like me, you're going from $12.99 to $13.99.
Oh boy.
So yeah, it's taking effect on March 26th. So you'll see it in your new statement next month, kids.
It's
all
the
the people that turn off like once a month just to watch their shows and then turn it off again. They're gonna get that. they're gonna have to pay through the nose.
But they're making it much harder to drop because hey, WandaVision's over. Here comes Falcon and Winter Soldier. Falcon Winter Soldier's over. Here comes Bad Batch. Here comes Loki.
There's no breaks anymore.
They're not. They're making it so you got to keep them, and God bless them because I'm fine with it.
Yep.
If it's good content, then I'm going to be happy.
So. Well, I think we're paying for like the paying for new servers because nobody saw a pandemic coming, and then like all the kids in the world have to watch all the Disney catalog, and all the adults have to watch. It's like at least we had something to entertain. Ben, I don't know, these two, I'd only seen maybe 2 or 3 of the Marvel movies.
Oh,
and
wow.
So this summer it was my homework where I basically went on a quest, my wife and I, and we watched all the Marvel movies. So it was like, during the pandemic, can't do anything, can't go anywhere. So we just watched them in order. So, but yeah, I mean, that's what everybody's been doing. So I'm sure that it's putting some strain on. We need some bigger servers. So let's charge everybody an extra, or
Well,
we have them in the door. Let's charge them an extra buck.
I'm
So
pretty sure it's been a couple times where the 2 a.m. rush of episodes dropping of Mandalorian and WandaVision. I think 2 or 3 times it like completely crashed the site. No one could get on it.
oh, that's another reason why you got to be old like me and just watch it at 5 o'clock the next day.
It does not pay. All right, you lose sleep. You have to wait longer because you can't get it up. It's just it's bad. But yeah.
All right. Well, that's the news, Fredo. Thank you.
Yes.
So now on to the meat and potatoes. Our special guest, Ben Hart.
Yeah.
He's the founder of the Star Wars Underworld. Which is a podcast. Just very quickly, so that people can find it real quick. Where can we find? Because you guys actually do a live show. See, we cheat. We record,
Right.
so they can
You
edit
do the normal way. We've done it the hard way. We've gotten used to it, so it's good.
So where can people listen to the Star Wars Underworld podcast, first of all?
They can listen to it live on Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern or 8 p.m. for those of us in Central Time Zone. And we broadcast on a site called Mixler. So you can go mixler.com. Let me make sure I get the thing right. You can just Google channel 1138. That's where we broadcast from. It's mixler.com/channel-1138. We have a live chat going on there. We broadcast live. We might be making some upgrades soon. Maybe. For right now, it's just audio only. And we've been doing that for almost 10 years now, which is pretty crazy. And then you can find regular episodes on iTunes and all the podcatchers. We have StarWarsUnderworld.com, which is our official site where everything is. We've been doing that, as I said, for a while, and it's been a lot of fun.
So I guess, like I said, this is going to be kind of a loosey-goosey just conversation here. But I guess tell us how the Star Wars Underworld started, because one of the interesting things you mentioned in the it's in the intro of the Star Wars Underworld podcast is the people you've met and the community that you've created through this podcast. So I guess, how did this whole thing start? Whose bright idea was it? And how did Chris and Dominic come into the whole deal? So you can just kind of give us the history, and we'll interject or drink beer or whatever while you talk. So.
No, yeah, feel free to interject at any time, because I will ramble for a while trying to remember certain parts of the story, because I've told it 1,000 times, but I always miss parts of it. But basically, the reason I'm called the quote unquote founder is because I created a Facebook page. It is the Star Wars Underworld Facebook page that still exists now. It'll be 11 years old on April 10th. It has been around for a long time. I just created that page on a whim, just as a fun project, just to do, because I was bored. And I had been kind of in Star Wars fandom, but not really. I had been on Facebook for a while. I didn't think I was on Twitter at that point. The Star Wars kind of online community didn't really feel like there was that much going on, but I was just kind of around. I said, hey, whatever, I like Star Wars. Oh, there's people besides me that like Star Wars. This is neat. And so I just started that Facebook page. And it has been after I had been gotten really heavily involved in the weekly watchings of Clone Wars episodes, because it was going on at that time. Clone Wars started in 2008. I'm talking 2010-ish, April. And so, there was message boards on StarWars.com I would always hang out on. And then just one day I said, hey, I'm just going to take advantage of this. And, I like Star Wars. I keep up with the news. I'm trying to stay in line with everything. So why not, start a page, and, maybe a few people will like it. I don't know. So I started the page, and I think I can remember getting like 7 likes the first week or the first day. And it kind of just went on from there. And it obviously took off, because I'm trying to look up the actual let's see, how many likes do we have right now? We have, of course this thing's being slow, 263,000 likes right now. That's 11 years later.
Somebody out there were the first 7.
Yeah, somebody out there. One of those people was Chris Siegel, one of my co-hosts. And he was around. He was doing other pages, stuff like that. And eventually I was just trying to do it going on my own. I was trying to be secretive. I didn't want anybody to know who I was. I was very just standoffish. Eventually I came out of my shell and made some friends. And then Chris was kind of one of the people that were just on the page all the time, commenting, whatever. And then I was going to go on vacation or whatever. It's like, okay, I need someone to watch the page while I'm gone. I got a guy named Chris. And then another friend of ours, Jordan, came on and just kind of did the page with me for a while. And that happened for a while. I think how Dominic got involved was he was involved with some other podcasts, listening to them, and we would like do these things where we would like say, "Hey, come join our page" or whatever on various groups and whatever. I think Dominic's first impression was like, "Who are these losers?" Trying to get my attention or whatever. And then eventually, I think it was a year later, we started StarWarsUnderworld.com, which is our official website. And it wasn't too long after that when we started the podcast. So it was about a year and a half later when we started the podcast. And Dominic was a listener of the podcast. He would call in and do our trivia. It's funny, we just did trivia tonight. He was one of our like big trivia guys, obviously. Years later, it's pretty obvious he's pretty good at that. So it's kind of fate would have it. But and that just happened. And then, obviously Chris and I, and there was several other hosts that kind of were jumping back and forth on the podcast. Eventually they kind of fell off for various reasons. Me and Chris stayed on. We needed another host. Dominic was around. Hey, let's do this. And that's basically how the podcast came to be, just kind of amalgamation of that. And it just kind of blew up from there. We started covering the news. And, we all obviously got along really well, and, we're really close friends now. And, it's been great. Well, obviously we've been Star Wars Celebration a lot. We've had a booth there several times. And I'm rambling, trying to think of like interesting facts. So if you have any questions, feel free to, but like, that's the gist of the story.
This isn't a video podcast. So what I'm showing is I actually visited your booth in Chicago. And
oh wow! So you got one of those. Those things were everywhere at Celebration. We like would line the table with them, like with thousands of them, and they were gone by the end of the day.
Sorry for listeners, it's their pin that they're handing out. It's a Boba Fett. It's a StarWarsUnderworld.com. So yeah, so it is still attached to my lanyard. So.
That's fantastic.
So I guess we'll back up a little bit now, and this might lead us into more kind of a roundtable conversation we can share. But we always like to ask people what their Star Wars story is. So you just told us about when the podcast started, but obviously you were into Star Wars before that. So how did you come to Star Wars? Why did it attach itself to you, or why do you attach yourself to it?
Yeah. It's interesting from this perspective of it's hard for me to remember my life without Star Wars. It's been like one of my earliest memories was my Star Wars being on TV and my dad going, "Hey, let's go watch this. This is something cool. You need to watch this." Like this, he was like, "This is important." And I know to this day, my dad's a massive Star Wars fan. Both my parents are, but like my dad was especially like, "This is like, you need to watch this. This is ideal." And I just kind of got sucked in. You have certain things, like I was a Disney fan before that. I was into all different things, but like Star Wars was the thing that I kept coming back to, that was just part of my life, and it never went away. And for years and years and years. And it was this sustaining thing. And Clone Wars, I think I kind of got into it around Phantom Menace era. I didn't go see Phantom Menace in theaters, but I saw it on VHS, I think a bit later. Saw Attack of the Clones in theaters, Revenge of the Sith in theaters. And then Star Wars was done. You remember that time when Star Wars just ended and there was no other Star Wars movies or anything after Revenge of the Sith? At least that's what they wanted us to believe. So, that was kind of the era where you're like, oh, okay, I gotta move on to something else because Star Wars is done. It's over. And then this little thing called Star Wars, the Clone Wars, came around. And I was skeptical at first. And some people are still skeptical, understandably. But for me, it was eye-opening. That show blew me away. I watched the first episode like, wow, what is this? And it just took me by storm. And I was totally captivated by it. And it reinvigorated my fandom to the point where, I was a fan, but like I was hardcore into the show every single week, watching every new episodes and getting involved in the fan community. And that's ultimately what led into the Star Wars Underworld, because that show, got me into the fandom, and got me every single week wanting to talk about it and looking for places to talk about it. And I just created my own place to talk about it. And the Star Wars Underworld really was created as a place to talk about Clone Wars episodes. Back in 2011, when wasn't much going on the podcast, that's what we talk about is the new episode of Clone Wars. There wasn't much else going on. There wasn't any news. There wasn't any, Star Wars 1313 was coming at some point. I never did, but we won't talk about that. But, there wasn't movies. There wasn't anything. There was just like the Clone Wars was the big thing and we were all invested in it. And so many people that I know to this day, great friends of mine, as I say in the intro, that, I know because I watch Clone Wars and, we all kind of gather around that show and things. So that was kind of the start of it. A New Hope on TV, that was the start of it. But Clone Wars kind of propelled me to where I'm sitting today.
One thing you mentioned just now, you're talking about when you got started in the whole podcasting side of things, was it was very television focused.
Right.
And now we had the sequel movies and we had Rogue One and Solo and all these huge things for like over the course of the past decade, which were just great. But now we're kind of back into TV land again.
Clone Wars came back. We got Bad Batch coming. So many TV shows. Like it really has come full circle. You're right.
Do you feel very comfortable with the state of Star Wars and where we're at right now and where we're headed?
Yeah, I think, I've had mixed emotions over the years about certain things. I haven't loved everything. I don't think it was perfectly done everything, but I've enjoyed most of the content. I've enjoyed most of the movies. And, I've liked what they've done. One of my biggest things against Disney was when they canceled the Clone Wars. That was a huge thing. Go back and listen to our podcast right after that happened. We were not happy at all. We did not like Disney at that point, but they made up for it. They brought the Clone Wars back. They gave it its finish, and so Disney and us we're cool now. All right, there's no hard feelings, but it's it is funny how it has come full circle, and I was so thrilled back in 2012, like, oh, we're gonna get a movie a year. Are you kidding me? This is amazing, and I was so hyped on that, and then we got that, news that, after Solo, all the fallout with, certain things, they're not doing so well and, they're going to cut back on the movies. I've come to live with that. And like the Mandalorian, I think has made that transition so much better because the Mandalorian really feels like a film. Like it's so much of it is like each of those episodes is like a film unto himself. So like, I'm totally fine. As much as I want Star Wars movies, they can keep them for a while. They can go do those and think, I love what they're doing on the TV front, and they gave us a new season of Clone Wars. Bad Batch looks amazing, and there's so many other things to look forward to just on Disney Plus. Which, if we had a movie this year or last year, we couldn't have seen it anyway in the theater. Right. So it may as well just do it all from home.
So go ahead, Fredo.
No, I was just going to ask as a follow up, given we're discussing TV and Clone Wars. What were your thoughts on the last season of Clone Wars? From somebody who watched it, from beginning, lived it every week. Because I came into Clone Wars late. I had to go back.
Right.
How was your experience? We'll go through those last 12 episodes.
I thought it was near perfect. I think obviously I wanted more. Obviously there was certain arcs that were shown at Celebration, like, oh, you're never gonna get this. Like there's a bounty hunter arc that I'm still like, you gotta do this. Like there's a Cad Bane versus Boba Fett, and you gotta bring that into somehow. I'm disappointed that didn't make the cut, but like still, the episodes that we got were amazing. Especially those final 4 were some of the best Star Wars storytelling I've ever seen. Some of the best storytelling I've ever seen personally, and I think what I was most disappointed about Clone Wars when it got canceled was the idea that like this show deserved an ending. It deserved a proper like send off for these characters. And we got that with season 7. I think it was perfect in that sense. And, and I'm satisfied. There's still people out there going like, oh, finish the Clone Wars, do this, do more seasons. I'm like, I'm satisfied as someone who loved the show, who would love to have seen it gone on forever. We got the ending we wanted. We got a beginning, a middle, and end. And, I'm very, very happy with it. And I go back and watch those episodes quite frequently because they're still amazing.
So, what's interesting, I've mentioned on here, I didn't start watching the Clone Wars until after I moved here to New Orleans. So it was after 2015. And it was one of those things where it was like, okay, I always resisted it. It was like you said, skeptical. Don't mess with my Star Wars. It's a movie. I don't want to watch no cartoon. I was one of those guys. But I was like, you know what? All right, dogs wake me up at 6 o'clock on a Sunday. I'll, just started binge watching it. Couldn't stop. Just ended up really enjoying it. And I will say this is what the Clone Wars did for me, is that it saved Anakin Skywalker for me.
Absolutely.
It saved the character of Anakin Skywalker for me, because I thought, guys, TNT had their Star Wars marathon again this weekend, and still watching episode 2 and episode 3, Anakin Skywalker just makes me sad. But then I think about the Clone Wars and how that character is fleshed out. It actually makes you more, it makes me more accepting of Anakin in episode 3. So the Clone Wars saved that character for me.
Yeah. Oh, just quick question for you. Did you catch it on Netflix? Is that when you watched it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it wouldn't have been anywhere else at that point. Netflix, I think, was a huge turning point for Clone Wars, because when Clone Wars was on, it was not that popular. It was still this fringe thing that people were like, yeah, animated Star Wars, what is this? Like,
that's a good
even I
impression
came
of
at
me.
it from yeah. So like, and I get it. When you watch the trailers like that, it did look kiddie. And yes, those first few episodes, first few seasons, they were aimed at a younger audience, and they're not. Some of those episodes are not that great, but it evolved and it grew and it got better with time. And Netflix was this arena where everybody had Netflix, and you didn't have to pay for it. You didn't have to buy it on, on DVD or Blu-ray. You didn't have to catch it on TV. It was just there. People, I think most people caught it when it was on Netflix. I think one of the reasons Clone Wars is so popular now is because people watched it on Netflix when it was, just free to watch for a while. So I think that's amazing that so many people came to it. And the reason that we had the whole campaign and that it came back for a 7th season, like, I don't think any of that would have happened if it hadn't been for the fan base and the fact that it got so popular. And yeah, it's just an amazing ride.
Yeah, I've actually been, tipping off. It was kind of funny because my brother. So I want to back up when you talked about your dad, kind of was the link to your Star Wars obsession,
right?
And and that makes me think of something I was actually talking to Fredo about this weekend. Is that Star Wars is not the best movie ever made. I mean, it's not the best movie ever made,
Right.
but again, but you talk about what is so what probably is that is so important to you is because that connection that was you and your dad. For me, it was me and my brother, because my brother was, my older brother, he was, hearing about this stuff, and he's like, you gotta check this out. Took me to my first Star Wars convention in Lincoln, Nebraska, at a library.
Wow.
So it's those connections, and it's so what I was telling Fredo is like, I mentioned Donkey Kong earlier. Dave, you have in your blog, you rank your video games, and you're very, very thoughtful and very qualitative, and quantitative. I'm sorry, quantitative and qualitative as to how you rank these things. For me, Donkey Kong, the reason why Donkey Kong is the best video game ever is because my brother and I would go play it all the time. My brother and sister and I would go play it all the time. That was just so there's that, that aesthetic, the sounds. That's why, when it was on the Nintendo Entertainment System, the sounds were not quite the same as the one you just hit me to a couple of weeks ago, so
Aaron, that's important. I mean, that's so important, and why we sit here and talk about this week after week, and it's why I insist on like showing my kids these movies. I'm like trying to pay it forward. It's like my relationship with my parents and my siblings was bolstered through an appreciation for these movies. We just would watch them together. Random Saturday morning, you'd pull out the VHS and watch Empire Strikes Back. It was the best way to start your Saturday, was on Hoth. And nobody's ever going to take those memories from me. And now I'm like paying it forward with the next generation. And I love that so much.
Yeah, I've always said, or at least for a while now, I kind of like quantify like people's relationships with fiction, movies, TV shows, whatever. It's more emotional than we realize. It's not about, oh, this movie is great because it's got, these special effects and whatever. Yes, Star Wars has always pushed the boundaries. Star Wars in 1977 blew people's minds because people had never seen anything quite like that before. Yes, it was because of special effects, it was because of the acting, the directing, everything. But at the same time, it hit a note with people. And going so far to today where people have grown up with this in their lives and shared it with their things, it's more emotional. It's more about not just nostalgia, but like, I grew up with my dad with this, I grew up with my mom watching this, brother, sister, whatever, and now I'm sharing it with my kids. Like, that's the heart and soul of it. That's what Star Wars really means. It's not about like, oh, this movie, this, and like, yeah, we all have opinions, we all have, I don't love every single Star Wars film, but it's still Star Wars. It still has those characters, and that's why we love it. It's not about like the nuts and bolts. It's about the how it makes us feel.
Right. And what we've talked about a lot on this podcast is you know, it's really kind of interesting because like people of our generation, maybe I'm the oldest person here, so Dave and me and Fredo, because you look quite a bit younger than us, but we're original trilogy people. I mean, like I said, 77.
Yeah.
I was born in 73, so that's what I grew up with, and um, and so the prequels kind of took the wind out of the sails out of some people of my generation, not me, because I
Right.
was like, it's Star Wars, this is cool, until we got Padme combing her hair on and reminiscing about Naboo. Then I wanted to throw things at the screen. But anyway, that's why then when the sequel trilogy came out, and we got Chewie, we're home, and we saw Luke Skywalker again. People of our generation were like, "Oh my God, yeah, Star Wars is back." Whereas I think the people who grew up, and so this is my hypothesis, and now you can shoot it down if you like. But people like you, Dominic and Chris, who grew up with the prequels and with the Clone Wars, the sequels didn't turn your crank so much because it was like, it was kind of dismissive of the prequels in a little bit until we ironically got to the Rise of Skywalker. So
Yeah, it's funny because I always say, like, if you've listened to the Star Wars Underworld podcast, you know that at least 2 out of 3 of us were not the biggest fans of the Rise of Skywalker, just not quite. And we had very long discussions about our problems with that film, and ultimately they were like, okay, whatever. We just kind of moved on, because I don't like being negative. I don't like doing all that stuff and keep going on and on and on about it. Just let it rest. And ultimately, maybe my opinions changed over the months since I've last watched that film. But like, ultimately, my opinion doesn't matter. What matters is the kid, the 6-year-old kid that saw Star Wars for the first time. He went into a theater in 2019, and Rise of Skywalker was his first Star Wars film, and he or she thought that was the best thing he'd ever seen in his life. That's what matters. That is the most
amen.
important thing. And I love the idea of like, I'm this old grumpy person that didn't like the movie, but there's kids out there right now that love it, and they're gonna be pointing their finger at me going, you're dumb for thinking this movie's the best thing ever, you're a dumb old person. I'm be like, okay, you know what, I'll accept that, because I was the same way when I was younger. I grew up with the prequels. I thought they were amazing, and people older than me were like, these suck, and I'm like, it ultimately, it doesn't matter. It's this generational thing. And you know if anything has taught us is that the sequels will be beloved in about 20 years. So we'll see.
It is generational, though. You're right. We talked about that from our perspective. It was like, I'm probably the biggest prequel fan of the 3 of us.
Though
But
I'm the biggest Phantom Menace fan.
Yeah, you like the Phantom Menace.
Your drop
Probably.
off is much steeper, Aaron.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
I'm comfortable putting the 3 of them together. You're less comfortable doing that. But yeah, no, I really like those films a lot. And so it's kind of fun for me to be able to have the chance to talk to somebody who kind of grew up with them and might have more of an appreciation than maybe the younger generation or the older generation. So I would love to hear your thoughts on the prequels in general. If you have any sort of strong defense that you like to dust off from time to time to tell people.
Yeah, my relationship with the prequels has evolved over the years. Obviously, I grew up, in a bubble, in viewing those films in a vacuum, not having all the internet discourse and being like, well, these movies are fine. What's wrong? Like, what's the deal with these movies? Like, they're totally great. I love Phantom Menace. I love Attack of the Clones. I love Revenge of the Sith. Like, I really enjoyed them. And it was a massive shock to go online and like those. I don't even think people realize today like how hated the prequels were in the early 2010s, and even early back when I started podcasting. Like, it was crazy the amount of just hate that was directed at those, and also the people that made them. That's a whole other story, but it was pretty awful. Thankfully, we're past that right now, and the prequels are much more beloved, and the sequels are catching all the hate. But for me, it was like, I thought they're amazing. I was always coming to the fence. I think over the years, I kind of more accepted the idea that, yeah, they're not perfect films, but they don't have to be. That I don't have to say something is perfect, therefore I like it, or it's crap, therefore I hate it. It's not that simple. You can say, hey, this is not a great movie, but I like it anyway. And that's kind of my whole thing with the sequels. I think a cat's trying to get into my room. Never mind.
It's funny, isn't that such an American thing? Sorry, I'm going to alienate a bunch of people and you can go ahead and at me on this. Isn't it a very American thing to say, all right, well, this thing's okay now, let's go hate on this thing over here? It just seems like a very cultural thing to, in this country to, all right, there's something new to hate, so we'll forget about this thing over here. So
yeah, I think honestly the only reason the prequels aren't still hated is because we found something else to hate. The sequels and all this kind of stuff. Like, that's basically the long and short of it. And, I'm just waiting for the turning point. I'm waiting for like, hey, okay, when are people going to start loving the sequels and hating Rogue Squadron, I guess? I don't know.
Well, that's what's interesting is that thinking back when the prequels, the hate for the prequels didn't really start until after they were halfway done.
Yeah.
Like right after Attack of the Clones, because everybody kind of went, okay, Phantom Menace, there's some flaws. So obviously, it's the first movie, it's setting up stuff. You're gonna get your payoff come the next movie. Then Attack of the Clones comes out, and people are still not happy with it. But what's interesting is there was a whole generation, that grew up with it. To them, it hit them on an emotional level. I think sometimes we have to be cognizant of that. It's like that's why it's so big for so many kids and young people when they watch their first Star Wars movie, whether it's Rogue One or Rise of Skywalker, and that's the one that connects with them on an emotional level. And then they're having to come up with analytical reasons to defend an emotional decision that they like something.
And that's the thing that we've talked about a bunch of times is that, again, I go back to Star Wars, A New Hope is not the best movie. It's my favorite movie, but it's not the best movie. I mean, the acting is quite honestly not that great. The story can kind of be clunky from time to time, here and there. But that's what, as we grow older, this is my running thing. As we grow older, we have to remember, we're not 7 years old in the movie theater anymore. We're now, 48. And if you're expecting that 7-year-old reaction, then you're going to let yourself down. It was kind of the conversation we had with a friend of ours. I saved Jar Jar Binks for him because he hated Jar Jar Binks. And I said, you know what, Scott? I said, if you were, in your 30s and seeing C-3PO for the first time, you would think that he was the stupidest thing you'd ever seen, the most annoying character on screen. But because you were a kid, he's entertaining. He's funny. He's, the comic relief. So that's what Jar Jar is to little kids,
Yeah.
But the difference is, like you said, we did not have the internet to tell us that we were wrong to like C-3PO,
Yes.
So you're absolutely right about that. Rainy day, like it is here in New Orleans.
Yeah. Same here.
Yeah. Welcome to it. It's nice and cold and rainy, but, at rainy day, nothing to do, we're gonna put on a Star Wars movie. What is your go-to? This is my rainy day. I'll watch this Star Wars movie anytime. What is that you watch?
You know what? Solo, for whatever reason, really hits me in the right place, at least recently. It's a movie that, again, not perfect. I'm not saying it's the greatest thing ever, but it's a lot of fun, and I really really enjoy it. And it's one, if I'm gonna just watch a Star Wars movie, that's probably gonna be the one I go to. Or yeah, that's great.
You know what I've said about that movie is that it really maybe is the first movie in the Star Wars canon since A New Hope to come closest to A New Hope in terms of tone.
Yeah.
It's just very light and fun and Saturday morning cereal and swashbuckling, and it's a good time.
It's refreshing up next to the sequel trilogy, which was, for all of its high points and low points, was like, they're general like popcorn movies in the sense that the stakes are high. The galaxy is ending in every movie, and somebody has something. There's a planet killer, and it's going to destroy all these planets. We got to stop it. Like, that's the thing. That's literally the plot of The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker. So, like, it's nice to have a movie like Solo to be like, okay, whatever. Oh, so we got to steal the stuff from these guys, or this other mean guy's going to kill us. That's the plot of Solo. Like, and it's great.
I was that old guy going. I remember I literally said, I don't need to see a Han Solo movie. This is not. I mean, if we're gonna make new movies like Rogue One, I was all in. I was like, this sounds so cool. But Solo had so many traps in front of it that I could see that I was like, this is not going to end well. And because my whole thing was like, well, we know. I remember in the trailer they show, Chewbacca about ready to be hit by a boulder on the on the mountain. I was like, well, he gets out of it, and that's what I remember saying to these guys, like the Kessel Run. It's like we know they all make it out of the Kessel Run, but I still found myself gripping the arms of the seat in the theater. So they did such a good job. Yeah, you're right, Dave, of just taking you on an adventure, and I think also. I've said it before again, sorry, but Alden and Donald Glover got the essence of those characters so well.
Perfection.
that I was like, all right, I'm invested. And I wasn't taken out of the movie until Darth Maul showed up. That was the only time where I was like, well, that's an interesting thing, because I was like, wait a minute, that
was a curve.
A big curveball, but
I was definitely in the same boat with you before Solo. I think me, Chris, and Dominic, all three were like, this is a dumb idea. Why would you do a Han Solo movie?
Maybe that's where I got my opinion. Maybe it's all your fault because I listened to the Star Wars Underworld podcast and you guys set me up for,
told you how to think. But yeah, we were not a fan of that idea.
I'm a mindless automaton.
And now I'm like, oh, they're going to turn into a trilogy. I'm so disappointed. Like, I legitimately, like I want Solo 2. I want that movie to happen, but probably not. But I don't know. Maybe it was a dumb idea because it failed, financially at least. But still, good movie.
Funny. I go back to what you were talking about earlier, which is just like this is the sort of thing that we set ourselves up with when we get on the internet.
Right.
Whether you got that idea, Aaron, from them or from another place, it's just like that was the conversation. Who needs a Solo movie? We don't need a Solo movie. And it was like, let's just poison the well before it ever even hits theaters. And it was like I guess it was a logical step forward for the fan base, because before the fan base had always been, let's destroy what everyone already loves that's already been released. Let's bag on all the good things and complain about that. And so now they had to take it to the next level and say, well, you're going to hate this thing that's coming out. I don't know. It's funny because you talk about the expectations that this is something we always talk about on this podcast, which is just like check your expectations at the door, right? Our enjoyment of a film should not be dependent on what Rando McRandomson in Oregon is saying, you
Right.
know? And so we always, we say we'll give our honest opinions on things. Again, Rise of Skywalker wasn't very popular on our podcast.
But
But
I didn't leave that theater going. I didn't leave that theater mad. I mean, it was.
right.
It was like I saw a Star Wars. Yay! Sorry to interrupt you there, but it's very similar. Last Jedi has become everybody's favorite meme really. And of course, I've told this story before. I was like 3 days post surgery. I had rotator cuff surgery, and I literally had painkillers injected into my neck as I'm watching this movie. I scheduled the surgery so that I could still go to Last Jedi on opening night. Anyway, so I'm sitting there, and I remember having the thought. This is a clear as a bell thought going, "Am I enjoying this?" And yeah, I am. So like I said, maybe it was the drugs, but then so my best friend since preschool, he sends me a message. He's like, "I'm taking the kids to Last Jedi, but I'm seeing all this stuff. Like, what am I, what am I going to do here?" And I said, "Mike, I said, just check your expectations. Like Dave said, check your expectations at the door and just go in, and you're going to enjoy a Star Wars movie." But it was too late. They got him already. So let's just go through each of the sequel, each of the trilogies. So the original trilogy, what is your go-to? What is your favorite of the three?
Oh, I don't know. I love A New Hope, but Empire is just perfection. So I have to pick that one.
Okay, these are just gonna be quick fire. We're not going to judge anything, but Empire is the easy answer because that's what everybody says.
But it's also true.
Literally the stock answer. Like, couldn't be more boring.
Okay, so prequel trilogy of the three, which is your go-to?
I think Phantom Menace, honestly. I grew up watching that one, and it still slaps, as the kids say these days.
That one, they say that? Sorry.
Apparently.
They do. Apparently they do.
I'm old enough to say that the kids say these things. I don't know what they're saying.
Of the three, that one I think looks the most Star Wars.
It does.
2 and 3, I know what George was pushing things and trying things out in 2 and 3. But as I was watching TNT, like I said, it's like Attack of the Clones looks like a video game for the majority of that movie.
Yeah.
Now it's still, I still enjoy it, but we need to have a count sometimes of how many times Padme should have died in that movie, given if we use Earth physics. All right, so sequel trilogy, which of the three?
Ooh, I will say Last Jedi. I think it's just the most ambitious, the most awe-inspiring, the most just visually stunning.
That's what I was just going to say. That's the best. What Ryan Johnson did, because I was on this weekend. It's a beautiful looking movie.
It is, and look, I don't love every single creative decision in that movie. But for crying out loud, the movie, you just listen to Ryan Johnson talk to know he understands Star Wars. He loves it, and he's just a brilliant filmmaker. And even if you don't like everything that happens in the movie, it's still he thought about it, and it's brilliant.
Okay, so let's talk about your podcast here.
Yeah.
How long has the Star Wars Underworld been going on? You said about 10 years now.
About 9 or 10 years. I know we're approaching our 11th anniversary.
So you started this when you
Star
were in
Wars
middle
Underworld,
school? Is that
and
right?
the podcast started about a year or so after we started on Facebook and the website. So around 9-10, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen you guys in person because so you guys started this when you were in middle school. Then I take it. So what's the?
I was.
You don't have to give away your age.
I was 18, 19, I guess.
All right, so I was close.
I'm 28 now.
So what has been the biggest, the most incredible moment from, like let's just say the most memorable moment of all of your episodes? Because I mean, what's the one episode maybe or moment in an episode that stands out for better or for worse, what's the one that's just like, or maybe for better and for worse, whichever, if you want to give us two.
Yeah, I'm trying to think because to be honest, I record those shows and then I forget about it. It's in the past. So it takes me a while to like drudge up the memories. But there was a recent thing, and you guys that listen to the show regularly, you know this. It's Dominic surprised us all and surprised me overall with the Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy intro thing.
Yeah.
That freaking blew me away. If you don't, just go. I don't know if it's on somewhere. You can find it. I need to post it online for people to actually listen to it. I replay it on a podcast every chance I get, but that's just blew me away. And a podcast memory, I will say any of our live shows at Star Wars Celebration. We did the podcast stage at Star Wars Celebration in 2015. That was amazing. First time I'd ever done anything like that in my life. Being on stage doing this was astounding. And then we've done it from our booth a couple times, and just and it's always and getting to meet people and come up and say, hey, I listen to your podcast. I'm like, what? You listen to the podcast? What are you talking about? Like, there's people. And also one of my favorite things to happen at the booth is people come up and they obviously are kind of advantageous. They're kind of, they don't really want to come up. They don't know who's there. And then you're like, hey, and how's it going? Shake their hand. And you'll start talking and they're like, their eyes widen and then like step back and go, it's you. You're the voice. It's your voice. I know you. And I'm like, yeah, sure. So it's a lot of fun.
So how do you guys collaborate on, I guess, I mean, because there's a lot of noise out there, I mean,
yeah.
It's like, we sometimes, we call it news and we do take reputable news, but then sometimes it's just people saying random crap on the internet that we say, okay, this is random crap on the internet. Let's just talk about it and see if we think it's viable or whatever. How do you, the three of you, decide, yeah, we're talking about that? No, we're not going to talk about that. This is garbage. That is garbage. How do you sift through the noise and come up with your I guess your show content?
It's funny. I think we're all, when it comes to stuff like that, we're all three pretty much on the same page, like kind of on a subconscious level, if you will. Because normally speaking, I put together the show notes. I just kind of decide what's in the show. And then Dominic comes along and he fixes the show notes and he throws away something he doesn't like. And then we do the show. And that's basically it. I think we all kind of like, we've been at this so long and we all come at, we have different perspectives on Star Wars, but ultimately the same perspective, just kind of a positive, realistic standard. We're not going to Mike Zero and getting our news from him. All right. We're not doing that, but, just kind of, and we like the spoilers and the rumors like that. We always kind of talk about that, but, doing it in an honest way and saying, hey guys, this is interesting, but also don't totally trust it because, stuff is not true on the internet sometimes.
Surprise, surprise.
I could jump in.
Yeah, please do. Talk about show notes. I should have put together show notes.
Some of the best shows have no show notes, all right? So don't feel pressured.
The decision to go into some news and to potentially like break news occasionally and have Dominic, play that role and like dig into things and research things and talk to people and try to track these things down for you guys. What went into that? Where along the line did you guys decide like we want to break some news, not just talk about it?
Yeah, we've done that a bit. It's been a while because it is. Scooping is involved. It's a very involved process. It can be scary sometimes, especially when you're dealing with people that don't want to. So, but I remember we actually broke the news. We broke the Chewie we're home moment back in the day. It was the line came to us as Chewie, we're back home. And maybe that was the line at the time before we even knew what Force Awakens was going to be. We knew there was going to be a scene where Chewie and Han get back on the Falcon. They say, Chewie, we're back home. And of course, the line changed, but that was exciting for us. We haven't done a lot since then, but, it is fun to, break the news and do that and stuff like that. But, I like supporting, others. We've got some great people, in the fandom right now that I think are pretty good at, predicting stuff and getting some good news. Kessel Run Transmissions are some guys that are friends of ours that they've been getting a lot of good stuff right. Obviously scooping, you can't always get everything right, but they nailed it on Bad Batch. They knew that was coming right before that, so we try to support them as much as we can and talk about their stuff and yeah, it's been fun.
I always wonder how those guys and like others, how they get. You don't have to answer this. Maybe it's just a rhetorical exercise, but how they get their sources. It's like, do they just follow somebody into a bar and get them, drunk and talking about Star Wars until they get some sort of, rapport together? But it's like, because it's like these guys always have something.
Yeah, I don't know their process because I've known people in the past that they are get to know people that work on the set and they'll do spy photos like that. That's a whole involved process. But you have to be really careful because if you have an open email address, people will just send you stuff and say, "Hey, I know what the plot of this next movie is going to be and here's the script." And you can't report on that. You can't just say "Oh yeah, this person sent us the script for this and here it is." That's a surefire way to ruin your credibility because that person's probably lying. But then you will go on YouTube and realize, yeah, there's a lot of people that do fall for this stuff because it's just everywhere and just people will just make up stuff at no time. But so having sources and also being able to trust those sources and not give them away, it's really it's a big time.
Now, Dave, you work in journalism. Yeah, are you ever just kind of blown away by some of these guys and how they get their information? Or is it just that's routine?
It's kind of routine, but what's fun about it is the debate that goes into covering it that way in the first place. Because for me personally, I don't like spoilers. And I like the fun of discovering things, as you watch it for the very first time. And so for me, this is, I don't like diving into spoilery topics. And so for me, it's let's not cover that.
It is there. I'm not going to say the act of spoiler culture, what we're talking about here, is not maybe not necessarily a victimless crime. It does get messy when you're just talking about this stuff and you're people, I think genuinely people put this stuff out there, go, okay, just share it with people that you want to see it. But then it gets on certain sites, it gets blown out of proportion, and you have what happened with Ahsoka Tano and Mandalorian. That should have been a big reveal, but it wasn't because it leaked early. And I know some of the people that leaked that, I wasn't interested. I would have read that because I like spoilers to a certain degree, but I understand people that didn't want to know that, and it screws it up. I love spoilers just from the fact of I remember sitting in the theater for Force Awakens. I remember reading, we got portions of the script or something. We read it out on the show. This was public stuff. I remember reading that Rey and Finn are on Jakku and they run past the Millennium Falcon. And they go to another ship and then it explodes and then they go back to the Falcon. And then I'm watching Force Awakens and they're running by and you can't see the Falcon, but they say, "What about that ship? That ship's garbage." And I'm I just burst out laughing in the theater. I'm they're talking about the Falcon. I love it. But that was thing. And other times spoilers can ruin things because I was cringing through the whole Han and Kylo bridge scene because I knew it was coming. I knew he was going to die.
I kind of actually on spoilers, I kind of walk a line because if we're far enough out from the movie being released and I'm listening to you guys or I'm listening to another podcast, I'll listen to those because of a couple things. One, it's I'm old enough that I'm going to forget half of them by the time the movie comes around. But the other part is unless I've seen, the director saying that this is what's going to be in the movie, then if it's somebody, with all due respect, somebody reporting that this is coming, it's not gospel until I see it on screen. So, it's something kind of fun to play with.
It's not gospel if it comes from the director. That's just the nature of the creative process. They're constant.
Pathological liar J.J. Abrams, come on.
Well, there's that too, but there's also the fact that they're editing until a couple of weeks before the release of the film. So it's all changing.
And that's what can be fun about spoilers is the whole idea of like there is plausible deniability with almost all of it, because like you can say, okay, this is going to happen, but like I don't know exactly until I actually see it in the theater. Like I love like reading about, okay, Luke Skywalker is going to be on an island in The Force Awakens, and then going to that island, I'm like, oh, this is it. Like this is, you kind of got a teaser for it, but it wasn't like you got to see it because obviously it's on screen. And then sometimes spoilers come up, and then you'll find out, hey, that was a deleted scene. It wasn't actually in the movie. Like we heard, what was it? The elevator scene in Last Jedi with Mad Max guy. I can't remember his name.
Oh, Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy. Yeah, that whole scene was just cut. We heard about it before the movie actually came out.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because it's making me think back to, so way back when Phantom Menace first came out, I remember, and I'm sure everybody remembers the old theforce.net website, which I think is still
Oh,
around.
yeah. There's
and there were the big, okay, here's the latest spoiler, here's the latest thing. I want to say I read the full script for that movie a couple of weeks before I went to see it. And I mean, it's basically it. That's it right there. All those spoilers have been right. And I almost kind of went, okay, next movie, I'm going to not consciously stay away from spoilers. I don't know that it was any better because it was Attack of the Clones. But realistically, now looking back, I'm going like, yeah, you know, I could see why within the last 20, 21 some odd years, the machine in Hollywood has gone, okay, we used to be able to hand everybody a full script and here you go, and everybody's got a copy, pass it around, and now it's no, you're getting today's sheet with as your 3 lines, and that's all you're getting. Because, spoilers and all this information has become such a big deal.
Well, they've definitely plugged some holes because, like, you look at, just the spoilers around Force Awakens, pretty much that whole movie was out there prior to it, and then we got to Last Jedi, and we knew nothing about that movie. Like Snoke dying, all that kind of stuff, that wasn't in anywhere leaked. Like that was nothing. It was all a surprise. And then we got to Rise of Skywalker. There was a few spoilers. I think a lot of that movie was out there. So maybe it's just a problem with J.J. Abrams. Like as hard as he tries to keep secrets, he just keeps leaking out.
So, okay, so you've got another podcast that you're a part of. Is it the IPC podcast? Is that right?
Yes, the Intergalactic Peace Coalition podcast. Yes, it's a mouthful, but it's been fun. It's a show I do with my buddy Zach Arnold, and we had Jake Damon, our other buddy, on there for a little while. And it's basically just an anything and everything podcast. We talk about, we just did Jurassic World, Camp Cretaceous, that show a few weeks ago, and we just released that episode, and then we're going to be talking about WandaVision this week. So, just kind of anything and everything. I have my Star Wars, outlet covered with Star Wars Underworld, and we do talk about Star Wars on IPC, occasionally, but it is fun to kind of go out. We've been doing that for 6 or 7 years now, me and Zach. Like it's been a ride, and you can find that at also on StarWarsUnderworld.com. We post every episode there, but yeah, so many topics, so much stuff, and it's been a blast.
So last thing I'll just ask before we go on. So how you guys talk a lot about obviously the movies and the TV shows and everything on Star Wars Underworld. But where are you? And sometimes though you do kind of get into the books. Where are you in? How you're liking Star Wars books? Let's say especially since they moved everything to Legends. And kind of recanonized everything. I don't know where are you at on books?
I never really got into Star Wars books that much prior to the canon wipeout, whatever you want to call it.
What do they call it? What do they call it in the High Republic? The great.
The great disaster.
The great disaster. Okay.
But so I read Kenobi. I read maybe Heir to the Empire, but I wasn't too up on Star Wars books at that point. And I kind of saw it as like a opportunity to kind of get a fresh start and just kind of get into the books and getting into them on the ground floor. And I've enjoyed most of the books. There's some that I do not enjoy, but there's a few that have been great. Some of them have won me over, like the recent Alphabet Squadron trilogy. I didn't really care for the first book, but I liked the second book a lot. So the third book just came out today, so I'm looking forward to getting into that one. And I've really enjoyed the High Republic too. So I think they've done a lot of good stuff. You know, it hasn't all been gold, but they've really been trying. And I think just look at what's been going on with the continuity. You have Timothy Oliphant playing Cobb Vanth, you know, after he showed up in the Aftermath trilogy. Like, that was insane.
Now,
I remember when that happened, like we lost it. We were like losing it. And like then like Boba Fett shows up
Yeah.
and Ahsoka shows up and all these other huge A-listers. And we're like going nuts over Cobb Vanth, you know.
I love it. I love it.
Now you did. We like to brag about things. You know, it's kind of non. It doesn't really jive with New Orleans all that much to brag about things. We know things are good. We like our city, but we are going to brag here for a second. You do realize that there are 3 Star Wars novelists, Star Wars authors in New Orleans, in the New Orleans
Oh,
area.
really? See, I think it was it Claudia Gray talking about like, oh yeah, her home in New Orleans. I'm like, I didn't know she lived in New Orleans.
Yep,
What?
Claudia Gray, Daniel Jose Older, and Brittany Williams.
Wow.
Yep,
Oh,
we had Brittany Williams on the show. She talked about because she wrote the in A Certain Point of View. She wrote the L337 short, and
oh wow, that's great.
so yeah, so it's yeah. So once we can have conventions again, or you know, hopefully they'll be signing things, you know, at Wizard World or something.
And see, that's my bucket list. It's like have a Star Wars celebration in New Orleans. Like that's what I want.
So okay, this is my part of my Star Wars story, because I again grew up Star Wars, loving it and everything, and I remember I went to a convention in Omaha in about 2000. It was AlphaCon. And that was the first time that I found out about the 501st, which now I'm a member of the 501st. But I remember this was outside of a hotel in downtown Omaha, and all the 501st guys were in armor, and they were heading downtown to a bar to go hang out in armor. And I was just like, I don't know why I'm sharing this. It was like, so New Orleans, to see people walk, I'm just guys that would kind of fit, but I would not recommend anybody wear their armor down in the French Quarter.
Over in the summertime.
Oh yeah, that's a bad idea. That's, oh my goodness.
Yeah, well, I wore I've marched in a Mardi Gras parade in both my TK armor and in my Snow Trooper armor. I think I lost 10 pounds that day with the Snow Trooper armor. Well, hey, Ben, we're not going to keep you any longer. You've been a joy to talk to. This has been awesome, and I hope we do it again sometime. Want to thank you for coming on. And again, to everybody listening, Star Wars Underworld podcast, it is, and I'm not being Eddie Haskell here, it's one of the more enjoyable podcasts that I listen to because it's thoughtful, it's fun, it's non-judgmental, it's, you know, it's just good listening. I mean, you take on big topics. I mean, you guys took on the Gina Carano stuff. You know,
Yeah.
You where it's clear where your emotions and where your heads are at, but still you're just 3 good guys to listen to. So I always enjoy your episodes. So, like I said, that's not me sucking up. I just saying that you guys do a great job. So
no, thank you so much. Seriously, that means so much because I think we do try really hard to not just make it entertaining, but make it mean something too. And, you know, and despite some angry reviewers and angry comments, we still stick to our guns and speak our minds and be honest with you guys and, you know, and stand up for what's right. And, you know, and don't take crap from certain people, but also just, you know, be as inclusive and as enjoyable as possible. So I appreciate that beyond words.
So yeah, everybody listening, find Star Wars Underworld podcast anywhere you get a podcast. You can find them and visit them on StarWarsUnderworld.com. Like all the things that Ben plugged. Hit them up. So, and if your friends are looking for another podcast, tell them about the Who Dat Jedi podcast. You can find us on Twitter and on Facebook. Talk to us about Star Wars. Like I said, we like to be bothered during the day while we work. It's all good. But yeah, otherwise everybody stay safe. And despite what your governors are saying, wear your mask, please, so I can go visit my family in Texas and Nebraska. That'd be wonderful. Thank you. But there's my political statement for the night. But until then, we'll all say who dat.
Who dat?
We won't make Ben say who dat. I don't know. You guys have a great week. See ya.
McConkey.